Southwick House is awake before the sun. Lamps burn over a single table, and the table is a coastline made of pins. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword. On paper it looks orderly. In real life, it's a million moving parts that can't be rewound. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands at the edge of the map and keeps his hand still. He has learned that if he touches anything, someone will read meaning into it. Around him, the room is full of men who command fleets, air forces, and armies. Yet right now, they're waiting on something none of them can order into shape: weather. It's June 4th, 1944. The invasion is supposed to begin within hours. Ships are staged, aircraft are fueled, paratroopers sit in silence, straps checked twice, faces fixed forward like they're already airborne. The plan has been rehearsed so many times that it feels inevitable, and then the Atlantic starts rewriting it. The forecasts come in as numbers first: wind speed rising, cloud ceiling dropping, seas building into a chop that will turn landing craft into slammed metal and seasick men. If the cloud base stays low, bombers can't see the targets they're meant to soften. If the wind stays high, the airborne drops scatter like spilled grain. If the sea stays rough, the first wave hits the beach late, disorganized and already exhausted. Eisenhower calls his commanders in. Admiral Bertram Ramsay for the naval crossing, Air Chief Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory for the air plan, General Bernard Montgomery for the ground battle that begins the second the ramps go down. They don't come in like men walking into a meeting. They come in like men walking into a verdict. The meteorologist, James Stagg, lays out the storm with careful words. A system has moved in hard across the channel. The window they need, moon, tide, dawn light, doesn't care about their schedules. If they go on time, they go into the teeth of it. If they delay, there might be a break behind the storm, but it will be narrow and uncertain. Lee Mallory pushes first, because the airborne troops will pay first. He warns that cloud and wind could shred the drops into chaos. Men landing miles off target, units unable to form, critical bridges and roads left uncut. His fear isn't melodrama, it's arithmetic. Ramsay looks at the sea like it's an enemy with no face. He explains what rough water does to timing, to radios, to formations. The fleet can cross in bad weather. Landing craft can't perform miracles in it. Montgomery refuses to let the room drift into paralysis. Delay, he argues, is its own danger. The longer they hold this force on the coast, the more chances the Germans have to notice patterns, unusual traffic, odd radio silence, the pressure of something huge waiting to happen. If they miss this window, the next one isn't tomorrow. It's weeks. Weeks means the invasion becomes a secret too large to hide. Hundreds of thousands of men packed into staging areas, trying not to leak rumors into pubs, letters, and loose talk. Thousands of vehicles and ships burning fuel just to remain ready. A plan built on momentum turning stale. Eisenhower doesn't argue with anyone. He asks the questions that force clarity. How bad will it be tonight? How likely is a break tomorrow? How long can the Armada wait without breaking apart? The answers are all variations of the same truth. No one can guarantee anything. They can only estimate and hope their estimates survive contact with the Atlantic. The room grows quiet, not because they've agreed, but because they've reached the edge of what planning can do. Eisenhower looks down at Normandy and imagines the first minutes, ramps dropping, men running, water and smoke and confusion, a thin line of sand deciding the shape of the world that comes after. He knows the cost of going. He also knows the cost of waiting. Finally, he makes the only decision that still leaves a decision later. He postpones 24 hours. The order moves outward through the headquarters, through radio rooms and dispatch riders, through harbours and airfields. Ships that were already committed turn back or hold. Men who had braced themselves for the point of no return are forced to sit with the fear again. Now the invasion is a loaded spring, and the war room becomes a place of waiting, dangerous waiting, because it gives everyone time to picture failure in detail. Eisenhower stays a moment longer at the map, alone with the pins and the silence, knowing that the next briefing will demand the smallest word that ever carried so much weight. Go. The delay does not feel like rest. It feels like holding your breath for an entire day. Across the south coast, ships sit in tight formations, crews staring into darkness that never fully turns into night because everyone is awake. In camps and airfields, men are kept sealed in, briefed again, checked again, fed again, as if routine can keep the mind from running ahead to the beaches. Back inside Southwick House, the war room turns into a clock. Every hour that passes is 1 hour closer to a decision that cannot be delayed forever. Eisenhower knows what postponement costs. It costs momentum, it costs secrecy, it costs nerves. But he also knows what a storm costs, and storms collect payment immediately. Late on June 5th, the commanders return. Same table, same map, new charts. The meteorologists look exhausted because they have been tracking the Atlantic like men tracking a moving target in fog. James Stagg lays the forecast down carefully. The storm system is still there, but it is shifting east. Behind it, there may be a brief break in the weather, not a clear summer day. A break, a chance. He describes it in the language of pressure and probability. Winds easing somewhat, cloud ceiling lifting enough for aircraft to operate, seas still rough but less chaotic than the night before. The window, he says, would be late on the 5th into the early hours of the 6th. If they want to go, that is the best moment they are likely to get. The room reacts instantly and differently. Montgomery leans forward as if he can pull the decision toward him. He wants to seize the window before it closes. Ramsey does not celebrate. He calculates. He knows less rough still means men vomiting in landing craft, radios soaked, timing sliding. Lee Mallory's face tightens. He hears chants and thinks scattered drops. Lee Mallory speaks, and he chooses his words like they are weight. The airborne operation is already the most delicate part of the plan. In poor visibility, the aircraft formations will spread, the navigators will struggle, the drop zones will be harder to identify. A few miles off course is not a small mistake when the mission is to seize bridges, cut roads, and confuse the enemy before dawn. He warns that losses could be severe. Ramsey follows with his own warnings, calmer but no less grim. The fleet can cross, he says. The fleet always crosses. The real question is what happens in the last mile, when landing craft have to hold formation under fire, when engineer teams must clear obstacles at exact times, when the first wave must arrive close enough together to overwhelm defenses. Rough seas turn precision into improvisation. Montgomery answers with the argument he trusts most. The war will not wait for perfect conditions. The Germans will not politely keep their divisions frozen in place. Surprise and momentum matter more than comfort. If they delay again and lose the window, they may not get another chance for weeks. Weeks of holding a secret the size of an army on the coast. Weeks of feeding rumors, accidents, and leaks. Weeks for German defenses to harden and for Allied readiness to fray. Eisenhower watches the debate without taking sides. He asks Stagg the question that no one wants to hear answered. How confident are you? Stagg does not pretend certainty. He explains that the forecast is based on patterns and observations, on data and experience, but the Atlantic is a moving machine. The window looks real. The window also looks narrow. If the storm slows, if the winds stay high, if the cloud base drops again, the whole invasion will be flying blind and landing in heavy seas. It is not a promise, it is a best judgment. That phrase lands harder than any warning. Best judgment. Because that is all Eisenhower has too. He looks down at the map and forces himself to see the operation as it will actually happen, not as it was drawn. In the dark, long before sunrise, airborne aircraft will cross the coast and drop men into hedgerows and fields. Bombers will attempt to strike targets they may not clearly see. Naval guns will fire through haze. Landing craft will heave on. Waves while soldiers grip rifles and vomit into helmets, waiting for the ramp. On the beaches, seconds will matter, minutes will matter. The first hour will matter more than any plan ever written. Then he forces himself to see the other path. Another postponement. The fleet turning back again. Men rebriefed again. More time for mistakes, more time for rumors, more time for one German patrol plane to notice something unusual and ask the wrong question. More time for the operation to become an enormous machine idling burning fuel, burning patience, burning secrecy. Eisenhower does not want a heroic choice. He wants a survivable one. He calls for a short break. Men step out, speak in low voices, return with faces that try to look certain and fail. The room reforms around the table, and the silence now is different. It is the silence that comes right before the word that releases everything. Eisenhower studies Stagg one more time, not for comfort, but for honesty. Then he turns back to his commanders and makes it clear this is no longer a discussion about preferences. It is a discussion about whether they trust their plan enough to execute it under imperfect conditions, or whether they risk losing the window entirely. He does not announce the final decision yet, not in this moment, but he sets the war room on a single track. One more update before midnight, one more check, and then, no matter what anyone wants, he will have to choose, go or not. Shortly after 4 in the morning, the war room gathers again, not with fresh energy, but with the numb focus of people who have stopped pretending they can sleep. The air feels colder than it should, even indoors, as if the building itself knows what is about to be decided. Stagg steps forward with the latest update. The storm is still present, but it has moved. The break behind it still appears, thin, fragile, but real. Winds should ease. The cloud ceiling should lift enough for air operations. Seas remain rough, but not unmanageable. The forecast is not kind. It is simply workable. No one smiles. Time, 415 minutes. The war room has passed the stage where hope is useful. Now only judgment matters. Lee Mallory repeats his warning, quieter this time, as if he has already accepted that the decision may go against his fear. Airborne drops in imperfect conditions will scatter. Pilots will fight cloud. Navigation will be harder. Gliders will be at risk. But he also knows something else. The airborne plan is not optional. It is stitched into the invasion like a vital artery. Ramsay adds his own final calculation. The fleet can sail, the timing can still be held. The sea will punish the first waves, but delaying again risks losing the chance entirely. His voice is calm, but his eyes keep flicking back to the tide notes on the chart like a man checking a fuse. Montgomery is direct, almost impatient. If the window exists, they take it. His mind is already on the ground fight, on the beach exits, on the first hours inland. He is not blind to risk. He simply believes the greater risk is hesitation. Eisenhower stands with his hands behind his back and listens to the room like a judge who has heard every argument and now has to choose which loss he can live with. The plan demands moonlight for airborne navigation, low tide to expose obstacles, dawn light for timing, and enough visibility for aircraft to do their jobs. It also demands one thing no chart can guarantee: German uncertainty. He thinks of the alternative again, not as an abstract option, but as a chain reaction. A second postponement means convoys reversing yet again, thousands of vessels shifting in the channel, signals and orders multiplying, chances for mistakes growing. It means men kept sealed in camps longer, tempers fraying, rumours starting, accidents happening. It means a secret on the edge of spilling, and if the next viable window is weeks away, the invasion stops being a sudden strike and becomes a slow leak. Eisenhower looks at Stagg, not for certainty, for honesty. The meteorologist does not promise anything. He simply holds the line that the break is likely enough, that if they are going to do this, this is the moment. A few seconds pass where the room seems to wait for someone else to speak. No one does, because this is the point where advice ends and responsibility begins. Eisenhower turns slightly, as if he is aligning his body with the weight of the decision. He does not deliver a speech. He does not try to make the choice sound noble. He says it plainly, because plain is all the room can bear. Okay, we'll go. The words hit the room like a switch flipping. Not excitement, not relief, motion. Officers move immediately, because this is what they've been built for, turning one sentence into 1,000 actions. The decision leaves Southwick House through runners, telephones, signal rooms, and coded messages that travel faster than doubt. Out in the dark, ships that were waiting begin to move with purpose again. Harbour crews work without conversation. Pilots awoken, briefed, handed targets. Paratroopers rise and tighten straps with hands that feel too steady to belong to them. Somewhere, a young soldier who had been trying not to think hears the simple confirmation that there will be no more waiting. It is happening. Inside the war room, the map is no longer a plan. It is a countdown. Eisenhower watches the staff work and understands something that almost no one outside that room will ever fully grasp. Saying go does not feel like triumph. It feels like crossing a line you cannot walk back over. The war will now answer the decision in its own language: weather, steel, and men. And even as the orders race outward, one final truth remains in Eisenhower's mind, sharp and unavoidable. If the forecast is wrong, there will be no way to pretend this was anything other than his call, his signature written across the sea. The moment the order leaves the room, Eisenhower's world shrinks. No speeches, no celebrating, just a series of updates arriving like waves, each one confirming that the operation is no longer an idea. It is movement. Staff officers lean over telephones and message pads. Timetables are checked against tides. Air plans are aligned with cloud ceilings that may or may not hold. Someone reads out the first confirmed sailing times. Another officer reports aircraft readiness. Time, 450s. The rhythm becomes mechanical, because if anyone slows down to feel the moment will crush them. Eisenhower steps away from the map and into a smaller room, not to escape, but to do something that seems almost quiet compared to commanding an invasion. He sits at a desk and writes a short note, a note that will only matter if everything goes wrong. It is not a speech for history, it is a receipt for responsibility. He writes that if the landings fail, the fault is his alone, not the Navy's, not the Air Force's, not the men on the beaches. His. The note is short because excuses are long. He folds it and keeps it close, like a man keeping a match away from dry wood. When he returns to the war room, the reports have a new tone. The system is no longer debating, it is executing. Eisenhower listens to the first confirmations that the airborne forces are launching. Aircraft are taking off into a night that still feels too unstable. The pilots will be flying low in places, pushing through cloud, trying to hold formation over black water. The paratroopers inside those planes sit with their knees pressed together by gear, hands fixed on straps, waiting for the light that tells them they are seconds from leaving the only safe space they have left. In the channel, the invasion fleet begins to stretch out. From above, it would look like lines drawn across water, each line moving with slow, relentless purpose. Destroyers screen the front, minesweepers cut lanes, landing craft ride behind larger ships like small teeth behind a jaw. Many of the men below decks cannot see the sea, but they can feel it. The roll, the slap, the constant reminder that the ocean is not impressed by courage. Back at headquarters, Eisenhower receives messages that are both reassuring and terrifying. Reassuring because things are moving on time. Terrifying because there is nothing left to adjust without breaking something. Every decision now has a cost measured in minutes, and the invasion does not have spare minutes. He walks the corridor briefly, then returns, because there is nowhere else to be. He checks the wall clocks. Time zones and timings matter now in a way they never mattered in planning rooms. Time, 700 mi. Somewhere on a runway, a pilot is watching the sky and deciding whether the next mile is flyable. Somewhere on a ship, a coxswain is reading the swell and trying to keep his craft from slamming hard enough to injure the men packed inside. Somewhere, a German sentry is looking into darkness and hearing nothing, because the entire operation is designed to arrive like an answer before the question is fully asked. The war room begins receiving early fragments, air reports, navigation updates, weather observations from aircraft already over the water. The cloud ceiling is uneven, winds are changing, some formations are holding, some are being pushed, nothing is clean, but nothing has broken yet. Eisenhower speaks to no one in particular when he finally says the only thing he can honestly say. Let's hope it holds. It is not a prayer for victory, it is a prayer for conditions, for visibility, for a few hours of tolerable sea, for just enough order that bravery can matter. Midnight passes, then 1, then 2. Reports continue. The airborne are nearing the coast. The fleet is advancing through the swept lanes. The schedule, miraculously, still resembles the one on paper. But Eisenhower knows paper plans don't survive the first hour of reality. The first true test will be the moment the sky over Normandy becomes crowded with engines and parachutes and confusion. The moment the enemy realizes this is not a raid, not a feint, not another false alarm. The moment the world changes from waiting to reacting. Near dawn, a staff officer brings another update, and the tone of the room shifts again. The first contact reports are coming in from the airborne drop zones. They are incomplete, confusing. Some units landed close, some landed scattered, some objectives are being reached, some are still missing. It is exactly what Lee Mallory feared and exactly what Montgomery expected. Not a clean script, a fight. Eisenhower listens, and he does not show relief or panic. Time 700 Mestal. He shows attention, because now the war room has entered the next phase, not deciding whether to go, but deciding how to respond to what go has unleashed. And the beaches are still ahead. The first reports from Normandy do not arrive like a clear message. They arrive like scattered pieces of a broken mirror. A radio call from one airborne unit, a naval signal about visibility, a pilot's note about cloud and flak. Each fragment is real, but none of them explains the whole picture yet. Eisenhower stays in the war room because this is where the fragments can be gathered into something useful. Staff officers build a running map of truth as best they can. On the boards and overlays, they mark what is confirmed, what is suspected, and what is still missing. The danger now is not only the enemy. The danger is acting on an illusion created by incomplete information. Then the airborne situation becomes clearer in the only way clarity ever comes in war, not as a tidy success or failure, but as a messy survival that still accomplishes something. Reports confirm many drops were scattered, units are forming in small clusters, men are improvising. Some key roads are being blocked, some bridges are being approached. The plan is not unfolding. The plan is being fought into existence. Outside, the naval bombardment begins. In the war room, it is only a line of timing on a sheet. On the coast, it is the sky flashing and the sea shaking. Ramsay's fleet is now fully committed, and the question becomes whether the bombardment will do enough in this weather to break open the defences before the first wave arrives. The commanders do not talk much. Talking is what you do when you still believe your words can change the shape of the day. Now they listen. They watch clocks. They watch the map. They wait for the first reports from the beaches, because those reports will decide the tone of everything that follows. The first beach reports are cautiously optimistic and then immediately complicated. Some landings are finding footholds, some exits are being pushed, but the signals from Omaha begin to carry a different weight. At first, it's subtle, delays, confused timings, units landing off their intended sectors. Then it becomes unmistakable. Progress is slow. Communications are strained. The situation is not moving the way the plan assumed it would. In a war room, crisis does not announce itself with a single dramatic line. It builds through repetition. Another report that sounds worse than the last. Another update that uses careful language to hide panic. An officer who stops using the word expected. Eisenhower hears it and does what he always does under pressure. He narrows the problem into decisions he can actually make. Do we reinforce? Do we divert? Do we adjust the follow-on landings? Omaha matters for more than pride. It sits between the American landings, a hinge on the coast. If it collapses, it can split the entire assault into separate problems that can't support each other. In planning, there are always contingencies. In execution, contingencies are just decisions with less time. The room begins to debate the unthinkable question. If one beach fails, can the invasion still succeed? The staff does not say the word fail loudly, but it sits in the air anyway. Ramsay's people consider the naval angle. Can additional fire support be brought closer? Can ships risk moving in to hit specific points? The sea is crowded and dangerous, but the price of distance is helplessness. Air commanders consider what can be done from above. In this weather, precision is harder, but pressure matters. Even imperfect strikes can disrupt a defense long enough for movement on the sand to become movement inland. Montgomery's focus is ruthless. Hold what you have, push where you can, keep the enemy uncertain about the main effort. If the Germans can identify the weak spot, they will concentrate on it. If they remain confused, they will respond late, and lateness is the one thing the invasion can exploit. Eisenhower's burden is different. He is not fighting a beach with a rifle. He is fighting the possibility of cascading failure with decisions and timing. He asks for clearer confirmation. What is actually happening on Omaha? What is rumor? What is verified? The answers are still incomplete, but the trend is clear enough to force action. He authorizes adjustments that sound small on paper and matter hugely in reality. More support where it is needed, pressure on the defenses, flexibility in follow-on waves, not panic, control. And while the war room wrestles with Omaha, another truth settles in quietly. The weather window is holding, barely. The decision to go is being tested minute by minute, and so far the sky has not slammed shut. Eisenhower watches the clocks again, knowing that each passing hour is another hour the operation survives, another hour closer to the moment when the Germans must either contain it or watch it become permanent. The war room keeps listening, and the day keeps unfolding, and somewhere beyond those blackout curtains, the first footholds are either taking root or being washed away. The next reports will decide which. By late morning, the war room is no longer asking whether the invasion is happening. It is asking what shape it is taking. The difference is enormous. In the first hours, every report felt like it might be the one that breaks the day. Now the reports begin to show something steadier, not victory, not comfort, a foothold. The British and Canadian beaches report progress inland, uneven but real. The eastern flank holds. On the American side, Utah sounds almost unreal in its relative success because war rarely offers any clean corner. Omaha remains the nightmare on the table, the place where messages arrive like bruises. But even there, the tone shifts in small ways that matter. A unit reports it has found a way off the sand. Another reports a strong point silenced. Another reports men moving through draws that are supposed to be death traps. None of it is fast, none of it is neat, but it is movement. In a room built around maps, movement is everything. Stalled means failure has time to grow. Moving means the enemy's timing begins to break. Moving means the second wave arrives to reinforce something that exists, not to rescue something collapsing. Eisenhower's staff keeps updating the boards, and the boards begin to look less like a gamble and more like a battle with a front. The air reports improve as daylight strengthens. The naval guns continue to hammer targets when they can see them. The airborne situation stays chaotic, but the chaos is useful. Scattered groups are cutting wires, ambushing small enemy movements, creating the kind of confusion that cannot be measured on a chart. The plan is not being followed. The plan is being adapted by men on the ground who do not have the luxury of debate. Then one of the most important pieces arrives, not as a dramatic announcement, but as confirmation that the Germans are not reacting with the speed everyone feared. The enemy response is slower than it could be, not because the Germans are weak, but because they are uncertain. They still cannot fully tell whether this is the main invasion or a massive diversion. That hesitation, that lag, is exactly what the Allies needed the weather to give them. Hours. Hours are what Eisenhower bought when he said, "Go," not certainty, not safety. Time. Time for the airborne to disrupt. Time for the Navy to sustain. Time for the beach forces to push through the worst of the first defences. Time for the invasion to become too large to erase with a single counterstroke. As the day continues, the reports settle into a pattern. The beaches are held. The beachheads are expanding. The cost is high, but the line is not broken. Eisenhower does not celebrate, not yet. He has learned that early celebration in war is a way of inviting punishment, but the hard knot behind his ribs loosens slightly because the operation has crossed the most dangerous threshold. It has survived the opening. At some point, he leaves the war room, not to escape it, but to see the human side of the decision he made in the night. He visits men preparing for follow-on movement, and he speaks to them in plain language. No grand rhetoric, no theatrical lines. Just a commander looking into faces that have been living inside the same fear he has been carrying, only closer to the water. He offers them what he can, steadiness. When he returns to the flow of updates, the invasion has already become something else. It is no longer a single decision point. It is a campaign. Supplies must land, roads must open, ports must be taken. The enemy must be pushed back faster than they can reorganize. The war room shifts from yes or no to how fast and how far, and that is the hidden meaning of the D-Day Go decision. People imagine it as one dramatic sentence that wins a war, but in reality, it is one sentence that begins a series of irreversible problems. Eisenhower did not choose victory. He chose commitment. He chose to accept imperfect conditions because waiting for perfect ones would have meant waiting forever, or waiting until the enemy was ready. In that room at Southwick House, the weather never became friendly. It only became manageable. The intelligence never became complete. It only became sufficient. The plan never unfolded cleanly. It only held together long enough for courage and improvisation to do the rest. By the end of the day, one truth is undeniable. The Allies are on the continent. The foothold is not a rumor, not a raid, not a hope. It is a reality that will force everything else to change. Eisenhower returns finally to the quietest part of the decision. The responsibility he wrote down in that private note. The understanding that if the day had gone the other way, no explanation would have been enough. That is why he said go without celebration. He was not trying to sound brave. He was trying to be accountable. And that is what the war room teaches when it is stripped of myths. Leadership is not certainty. It is choosing with incomplete information, then accepting the full weight of what follows. On D-Day, Eisenhower had to say a single word into a forecast that could not promise him anything. He said it anyway, and history moved.